Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweller, and you have turned in to your Alaska weather. Tonight is May 17th, 2017. Happy birthday to my beautiful wife and one of our dear friends, young Abby. And as you can reach us at 1-800-472-0391. Our website, weather.gov/Alaska, will get you the regional perspective for all three offices in the AOR, Area of Responsibility. And you can also contact us via email, nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. So forgive me if it sounds a little scratchy. I've been a little under the weather, but we will press on. Our weather headlines for tonight. Broad south to southeast flow is going to continue as it has for the past couple days. We're going to continue to see a long wave of southerly flow moving out over the state, and with that we expect temperatures to remain near or above normal for just about all places across the entire state. No real strong Arctic air anywhere in the Alaska region. Steady rain across the North Gulf Coast. This is going to be because of that southerly flow pushing up against the coastal mountains. And then we're looking for afternoon thunderstorms in the interior. There'll be a little bit of variation between day to day, but generally speaking, those could be the rule of thumb for the next few days. So let's take a look at our breakup map this afternoon. And as you can see, I'll move out of the way of the legend so you can check out what's mostly open and what's mostly out. And you can see much of the areas south of the Brooks Range, the Kuskokwim, the Yukon, all those are starting to be either mostly open or completely open. So it's been a very calm breakup this season. The temperatures have been slowly climbing, and with that we haven't seen any abrupt shifts in the ice pack or anything like that. Still, obviously, north of the Brooks Range, we do still have some ice up there, and so we will be monitoring that for you for the next several days into the next several weeks as that slowly breaks up as well. Looking at our satellite now, here we can start to see what we were talking about with that southerly flow. Basically what we have is a trough over the eastern Bering that extends now into the Gulf of Alaska, and with that we have just a continuous surge of southerly air. It's not really a strong push of moisture, it's not a deep fetch of moisture, just kind of a calm push of southerly air, which is warm temperatures and some moisture, especially along the Gulf Coast regions. Up over the interior, that's where you can see some of those brighter whites, and that's due to the thunderstorms or the higher convection, that's higher cloud tops in the atmosphere, show up as brighter white on this, and so you can see some of that. We do have one small storm that's rotating up here just near Point Lay, north of Kotzebue there, and with that we do have some snow to talk about. And let's take a look at the loop one more time. I'll step over so the folks in Southeast can take a look at the fairly quiet day that's going on down there. Some marine stratus out over the Gulf, but for the most part, a couple showers inland, and otherwise mostly clear skies for many of the places in Southeast Alaska. They've probably had the clearest weather for the day today. Now let's take a look at our visible loop. This is my preferred satellite because this gives you a better definition here. As you can see, calm and quiet this morning with clear skies, and then some of these cells, thunderstorm cells or showers starting to develop over the higher terrain, especially the Kuskokwim Mountains and up here northeast of Fairbanks. Here's our marine stratus out here underneath a ridge of high pressure that's building over the Bering Sea. And so with that, we have lots of marine stratus and fog out over the Aleutians and for the Pribilof Islands. And then let's jump back and look at the southeast portion of the state one more time. Here again, some marine stratus and that general southeasterly flow with some showers moving into the Alaska Peninsula and some of that rain moving into the southern end of Kenai and for Kodiak. Again, though, for southeast, pretty nice day down there with a lot of clear skies and just some offshore clouds. So taking a look at our weather map for this afternoon here, we can see our area of low pressure over the interior portions of the state. Not really going to call this a true thermal low at this point, but a weak area of low pressure, and this will continue to spin a few troughs or other areas of energy through the area and thus help to create those afternoon thunderstorms, some showers along the mountains, and some thunderstorms, mostly isolated nature, no significant outbreaks of thunderstorms. And then as we look towards the southern portion of the Alaska Peninsula, that's where we have our 995 millibar low, and that's kind of in the base of that trough, so this is what we call the parent low. It's been dominating the pattern for the last couple of days. This is going to slowly move off to the southeast, as we'll see, but as it does so, it will continue to swing some of that southeasterly winds and some of those pieces of energy from the south to the north. So Kodiak and the southern side of the Alaska Peninsula, you'll be in line for some more rain over the next couple days. Rain for the southern end of the Kenai Peninsula, and mostly just showers inland. The mountains along the Aleutian Range and the Chugach Mountains have the effect of helping us to stay dry for those of us that are on the opposite side of where the wind direction is. So on the northwest facing side, most folks in those regions will stay dry with maybe just the chance for some sprinkles. As we can see here, here's our marine stratus and fog out over the Bering. Shows up pretty well in this visible image, and you can see it pretty much runs all the way from just off the ice pack and then all the way down through the western Aleutians. We'll be fairly quiet out there with that high pressure in charge. As we look over towards the Gulf of Alaska, here we have another area of high pressure, and this is helping to push somewhat we call a coastal ridge back into the coastal areas. And so with that, we get a gradient that helps to set up along coastal areas, favoring things like the Turnagain Arm and the Copper River Basin, the Copper River winds there. And so with that, we can expect some southeasterly winds in the afternoon time frames, especially as that gradient helps to or start to intensify in the afternoon. Just a few showers there over southeast Alaska, and most of those are staying inland, just possibly drifting into the populated centers, but otherwise higher up in the terrain. Over the Arctic coast, that's where we have that pocket of snow associated with this trough of low pressure here. And this is just a few isolated locations reporting snow this afternoon, and that patchy fog is a little bit more prevalent all the way from Barrow out towards the Seward Peninsula. So what do we expect for tonight? Well, not a lot of change. This pattern is not a real active one to change. So we can see that continued energy moving up from the south into the Gulf Coast region, and with that we do expect the light rain and some showers to make it over into the Kuskokwim Mountains, into the Bristol Bay area. But the heaviest rain will certainly be on the southern end of the, on the Gulf side of the terrain there. As we look up towards the interior, our thunderstorms have dissipated overnight and become just showers as they are fueled by the afternoon heating. So once that dies off, we start to see things dissipate. Up over the northwest portion of the state, that's where our light snow will continue. And then that's that fog stretching all the way down under that high pressure, all the way down into the Atka and Adak areas. As we look towards southeast Alaska, going to be continued quiet weather there, maybe a few isolated showers, but they will be isolated in nature for sure. And then an area of low pressure drifting away from the Gulf of Alaska here for the next couple days. Let's take a look at Thursday's forecast, and again, not a whole lot of change here. This area of high pressure will build ever so slightly at about 1,020 millibars now. And so again, there we can see that orientation, what we call a ridge, and it's right along the coastal areas there. So as this gradient starts to get a little bit tighter and tighter, that's where we start to see those southeasterly winds that favor places like the Turnagain Arm, maybe Portage Valley, and especially up through the Copper River Basin. That's where we see those winds start to increase, especially, like I said, in the afternoon time frames. Again, more rain and possibly moderate rain at times for Kodiak, but just showers for much of the interior locations. Thursday will probably be a break from the thunderstorms. We just expect showers as things stabilize a little bit. And then we have our area of low pressure up here helping to keep the snow going, but it is starting to weaken and move away from the coastline there. Quiet weather out over the Bering with high pressure in charge and a system that's really not even going to make it into our area that's going to skirt south of the Aleutian chain. And again, that high pressure will help to keep Juneau and much of the southeast portions of the state quite nice for the next 24 to 36, even 48 hours, other than just a few showers throughout the area. Taking a look now into Friday's forecast, here we can see a little bit more rain starting to spread out over the coastal regions. This is pretty widespread in how it looks, but it's actually going to be fairly light rain and not really an all-day type of event. But we do expect some light rain over southeast and into south central Alaska, especially there again on the Gulf side. So some showers making it into the Alaska Range and into the Copper River Basin. Do expect another round of thunderstorms on Friday, so for those with aviation interest, be advised that there could be some thunderstorms with obvious convective turbulence and some icing associated with those. And then up towards the Arctic coast, things have started to dissipate and improve as far as the snow. Still expect a little patchy fog up there, but things should be quieting down for those folks as well. Then over the Bering Sea, once again, just patchy fog and some low marine stratus throughout the area as high pressure remains in control. We do have another system starting to make its way in, and that we will talk about into the weekend, but that is well off to the west right now, but will pack a decent amount of precipitation as it is down to 976 millibars. So looking at our temperatures this afternoon, you can see much of southeast Alaska with those sunny skies got up into the 60s. Just one spot down there, down in 45 degrees, but otherwise mostly low 60s to upper 50s. Down towards south central Alaska, looking at 46 degrees at 4 p.m. at Middleton Island. 47 degrees there in Cordova. A little bit cooler temperatures with cloud cover in the area, certainly cooler than it was yesterday in many of these spots. It was in the low 50s, or excuse me, the upper 50s across the Copper River Basin and part of the Susitna Valley. And then as you look up towards the interior, again, some sunshine early in the day helped places to spike up near 70 degrees like Fairbanks. Up along the Brooks Range, even got into the 60s with plenty of sunshine earlier today. Not until you get to the Arctic coast do you see those temperatures really drop off significantly, upper 20s and low 30s. Along the west coast, we generally climb from the upper 30s into the low 40s as you drop from north to south. And then looking out towards the Alaska Peninsula, 51 degrees there just south of King Salmon. And then we had 45 degrees at Cold Bay and 46 degrees at Dutch Harbor. And then out over the Aleutian chain, generally in the 40s for much of those locations. Up towards the interior, again, we saw low 70s and generally mid 60s for the northwestern portion of the interior. Along the coastline there where there's still ice in play, temperature is only able to struggle up into the low to mid 30s. And then out towards southwest, once again, just recapping, looking at generally in the mid 50s, 54 degrees at Bethel and 59 degrees at McGrath. Generally low 50s to upper 40s along the Alaska Peninsula with 51 degrees at King Salmon and 46 degrees again out there at Dutch Harbor. So taking a look at tonight's low temperatures, you're going to see generally clear skies, so temperature is going to drop pretty abruptly here out over the southeastern portion of the state into the low 40s, mid 40s for the southern portions. And then as you look, don't mind this. This is a little bit of an anomaly off of the image, how it copied over. So it's not actually going to be below zero in southeast Alaska tonight. But as you can see, towards the southern portion of the state, low 40s for the most part, with mostly cloudy conditions there. Up towards the interior, temperatures will stay a little bit warmer overnight in the upper 40s. And then up towards the Arctic coastline, temperatures will be in the upper 20s. Out over southwest Alaska, expect anywhere from the upper 30s to low 40s, and out over the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, generally around 40. For tomorrow's high temperatures, another fairly nice day for southeast with temperatures in the mid 50s. It'll be generally upper 40s to mid 50s for south central Alaska. Looking for warmer spots in the interior with mid upper 60s. Along the Arctic coastline, we'll see low 30s for our highs on Thursday, and down towards southwest Alaska, highs in the low 50s. So looking at our flying weather now, IFR conditions associated with that marine stratus and some of that energy moving up from the south. So we'll have a fairly wide swath of that across the Gulf. And then our pocket of snow associated with that low pressure up over the Gulf, up over the Arctic coast will cause some IFR conditions up there as well. Then as we look into tomorrow afternoon, not a lot of change to this map as you'd expect, a slow pattern to change. So just looking for mostly IFR conditions across the Gulf of Alaska, and then MVFR getting into some of those places as some lower clouds work into Bristol Bay. Taking a look at the passes then, Anaktuvuk Pass will be VFR to MVFR. Add again similar conditions there with convection in the afternoons. Lake Clark and Merrill are going to remain MVFR through the day. Rainy will be marginal visual flight rules. Windy will be visual flight rules, as well as Isabel, Mentasta, and Tanita. And then Portage is going to be instrument flight rules throughout the day with some lower clouds banking up through the valley. Chilkoot and White Pass will be visual flight rules. Freezing levels now, generally mostly above 4,000 for much of southern Alaska, climbing up to above 6,000 here down towards the Panhandle. And then again, that warm air really trying to stretch up all the way through the state there, generally above 6,000 as you get towards the interior. And the surface line now just starting to hug along the northwest coast here down towards the Seward Peninsula. Taking a look at our icing charts then, 7,000 feet is generally where we're going to start to see the icing tomorrow, and it's going to be isolated in pockets, light to occasional moderate throughout much of southern Alaska, and then just one more spot above 7,000 feet associated with that low. How's our jet stream looking? Well, mostly out of our area is really the key here. 150 knots diving south in support of this area of low pressure, and then driving off into the CONUS at about 80 to 95 knots. It is going to cause some significant severe weather. If you are traveling to the lower 48, be advised that this stronger jet will help to cause severe weather, especially as we move towards the end of May. Pretty quiet across the main part of the state, though, with the jet out of our area. As we look at our 9,000-foot winds, generally rotating in a counterclockwise fashion around this area of high pressure. Can't keep my highs and lows straight. And then as we look towards the Gulf of Alaska, looking for southerly winds at about 25 knots. Again, there's that south to southeast winds. As that comes up over the mainland, expect it to slow down just a little bit to about 20 knots and more out of the southwest. As we look into tomorrow's 3,000-foot winds, generally coming again around this area of high pressure in a clockwise fashion, and are over the mainland, mostly calm conditions until you get right up along the Alaska Range. There we have more of a west to east flow at about 25 knots and pretty calm conditions for southeast. So for our turbulence chart, that's where you can expect with those southerly winds to see some light isolated moderate, mainly above 7,000 feet, and just a small pocket of it there up along the Arctic coastline, again with that area of low pressure. Stay tuned, we'll be back with your marine forecast.
For many years, NASA has been sending robotic spacecraft to faraway planets like Mars. Some of these missions have included instruments that have given us a basic understanding of the types of radiation we can expect outside the Earth orbit. Even with this knowledge, there is still much to be learned about how the radiation in deep space will affect our astronaut crews. To help increase our knowledge base, a unique facility called the NASA Space Radiation Laboratory is testing living cells with the types of radiation found in space. Our Johnny Alonso traveled to the Brookhaven National Laboratory in Long Island, New York to find out more.
Radiation exposure is a very real risk for astronauts. Ailments such as cataracts and many forms of cancer can be directly attributed to high exposure levels. Because most of our recent astronauts have remained in low Earth orbit where the Earth's magnetosphere provides some protection from radiation, exposure has been somewhat limited. But with future astronauts traveling to destinations like the Moon and Mars, radiation exposure will once again be at the forefront of study.
To help us prepare for these dangerous space missions, NASA, in cooperation with the Brookhaven National Laboratory, is conducting research to help us understand the biological effects of space radiation. I spoke with Dr. Marcelo Vasquez at the NASA Space Radiation Laboratory here in Long Island, New York, to find out more.
Well, basically, I'm interested to find out if a galactic cosmic ray can kill brain cells. So in order to understand that, we have different models. For example, culture cells and petri dishes. Expose them to cosmic rays and see if the cosmic ray can kill brain cells or produce some functional damage. That's one part of my research. The other part is study animals. If after cosmic ray radiation, they have some kind of behavioral changes or functional changes after long terms after their exposure. Basically, we want to try to understand the risk for astronauts for neurological damage induced by cosmic rays.
So how is galactic cosmic radiation different from other types of radiation?
Basically, we can say that the origin of these galactic cosmic rays are far, far away from us, outside our galaxy. Basically, supernovas well beyond our galaxy explode and produce this kind of tremendous release of energy, and that energy is cosmic rays. So cosmic rays are basically atoms, elements, that travel in space near the speed of light. And one of the big unknowns is what kind of biological effect this cosmic ray can produce on astronauts. And this is really important for the new exploration vision to go back to the Moon and go to Mars. So our concern is that those cosmic rays, those atoms that are flying out through the universe, they have the potential to produce damage. So one of the goals is try to find out what is the best strategies to reduce the risk for astronauts, for example, for Mars mission and Moon outposts and sorties. There's several ways to can protect, and we believe that this radiation risks are not it's not a showstopper for astronauts, but there's a lot of unknowns, and that we need to reduce those unknowns in order to send astronauts in a safe way. But no matter what, astronauts with the best shielding, the best strategy, always will be exposed to some level of radiation.
How do you simulate galactic cosmic radiation on Earth?
We have what is called the NASA Space Radiation Laboratory. It's a facility to simulate the space radiation environment for biology or material sciences. So we have at Brookhaven big machines called particle accelerators. We benefit for that because they can accelerate cosmic rays like iron or carbon to the speed and energy that you will encounter in space. So these big machines deliver in a controlled fashion those heavy ions or charged particles to a target room. And so we can put cells, tissues on molecules in our target area and expose to those cosmic rays to understand what are the basic mechanisms. So the NASA have a research program addressing different topics like brain damage, cancer, DNA damage repair. It's a multi-user facility dedicated to support the NASA radiation health program.
How will biological research assist us in keeping our astronaut crews safe?
The first step is to understand the mechanism. So imagine this. These heavy particles traveling out through your body traverse your cells, your skin, your brain, or liver. And we know for the fact, by our basic research, that when these particles traverse a cell, produce DNA molecule damage.
Ionizing radiation is a stream of particles that, when passing through a body, has enough energy to cause the atoms to lose electrons. These heavy ions can damage living cells and may cause changes in the cell's ability to carry out repair and reproduction. This could lead to mutations in an astronaut's cells, which may result in tumors, cancer, genetic defects in offspring, or even death. By one NASA estimate, for each year an astronaut spends in deep space, about 1/3 of their cell nuclei will be hit directly with heavy ions. With this knowledge in hand, a big push is on to better understand exactly how to properly protect our new exploration crews.
Can you tell me the risks of long-term exposure versus short-term exposure?
Overall, NASA is concerned what is the total risk imposed by solar particle events that will be acute, so a really high dose of radiation delivered in a short period of time. But the good news is that we know how to protect astronauts for that. But one of the big risks is the chronic low-dose exposure to galactic cosmic rays, and we still are thinking what is the best way to protect astronauts for that kind of risk.
In one study, it was determined that an astronaut on a 900-day Mars mission, housed inside a conventional spacecraft, would encounter nearly 1.1 sieverts of radiation. That is the equivalent to the amount of radiation one would be exposed to in 550 years on Earth.
So what does the future hold for this type of research?
Well, I think it's a bright future because for NASA and the plans to return to the moon and go to Mars, radiation is a really critical risk to need to be studied. So our research will play a critical role for future plans.
And welcome back for your marine forecast. Let's take a look here at the sea ice edge. So a couple interesting things here. This is the first time so far in this season, 2017, that we've been able to push the ice edge up into the Chukchi Sea now. So you can see there, we are starting to see some open water all the way up into the Chukchi. And this new feature here, this Paulina is what it's called. Thank you, Matt Clay, for informing me of the sea ice terminology. That's a Paulina there. That is a big open area of less ice coverage. And so you can see that there showing up a little bit less ice pack, concentrated ice pack there. And otherwise, it continues to break up in place fairly quickly around St. Matthew Island and around St. Lawrence Island. Pretty quick decay, and we expect that to continue as the pattern remains much the same. Looking off in the southeast for the marine forecast now, pretty quiet conditions are going to be the marine theme. Southeast winds 10 to 15 knots for the inner passageways and about 2 to 3 foot seas. Out over the open water, not a whole lot more wind, southerly at 10 knots and seas about 6 feet. On into Friday now, southeast winds will continue for the inside waters, 10 knots and seas about 2 feet. And then over the Gulf, we expect south to southeast winds 10 to 15 and seas about 6 feet out there. For the south central portion of the Marines, they're looking for northeasterly winds throughout much of the inner waters there, including Shelikof Strait, and then a little bit more southeast easterly winds, again coming with those areas of low pressure out around that low to the south of the Alaska Peninsula, generally between 10 and 20 knots out over the open waters, seas running between 2 and 6 feet, and then a little bit lower seas 2 to 7 feet now down by Shelikof. On into Friday, expect much of the same southeast winds for much of the open Gulf and then northeast easterly towards the inner waters, generally between 15 and 25 knots, and seas are going to be 3 feet in the protected areas and about 6 to 8 feet for the open areas. For the Alaska Peninsula, looking for generally east or southeast winds, 15 knots, and seas are going to be 3 feet north of the peninsula and 7 feet to the south. And then on Friday, generally east to northeast winds north of the peninsula, 10 to 15 knots and 2 feet. South of the chain, east and southeast, and about 7-foot seas with 15 knots. Out over the Aleutians, generally again pretty calm winds out there for this time of year, east and becoming northeasterly towards the western Aleutians, generally between 10 and 15 knots, and seas on the order of about 4 to 6 feet. And then on into Friday, switching things to mostly northeasterly throughout the whole area, 15 to 25 knots, and seas a little bit higher at 9 feet south of the chain and about 4 feet to the north. For the west coast, looking for northeast winds or variable winds for the protected areas. Seas are going to be between 3 and 4 feet and winds about 10 to 15 knots. And then on Friday, expect a little bit more variable conditions, 10 to 15 knots. Seas generally between 2 and 3 feet. Up towards the Arctic coast, that's where we actually have the most interesting marine forecast with a little bit stronger winds out of the east, 20 to 25 knots, and even some freezing spray to mention as we start to see some northwest winds on the backside of that low pressure. Seas are going to be about 3 feet, and winds to the north from the northwest are about 15 to 20 knots. And then on into Friday, some more freezing spray a little bit farther to the north of Wayne right now. Winds generally out of the north and west at about 15 to 20 knots, and seas off the northwest coast there where there's still no ice, where there is now no ice at about 2 feet. So let's recap. South winds will continue to bring moisture into the Gulf Coast areas and help to bring some steady rain to the coastal mountains and a little bit more showery conditions for the interior. We'll expect showers for interior portions of the mainland and then some snow along the northwest coast. Things relatively quiet for southeast Alaska, and that trend will continue on into Thursday with high pressure in control. Expect that rain to continue for the southern portions of south central, especially on the coastal areas and near Kodiak. The snow will start to move away from the north portion of the state as that low drifts away, and expect some more afternoon showers over the interior. Quiet conditions with high pressure out for the Bering. And on Friday, some more afternoon thunderstorms and a better chance for rain to start to move into south central and southeast Alaska. Well, thanks for joining us this evening. Hope you have a great night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.